The locker room smelled of sweat and pine cleaner, the kind of scent that clung to your skin long after you left. I stood there, heart pounding like a drum, staring at Jake's broad shoulders as he tossed his soccer cleats into his locker. His laugh low, teasing, and infuriatingly magnetic cut through the silence, pulling me into a moment I wasn't ready for. We'd been teammates for 3 years, Jake and I, running side by side on the muddy fields of our small-town Ohio high school. He was the golden boy blonde, charming, the kind of guy who could wink at a stranger and have them blushing in seconds. I was just Sam, the quiet midfielder with too many thoughts and not enough courage to say them out loud. Everyone knew Jake was straight, the king of casual flirtation, tossing out compliments like they were free candy. "Nice hustle, Sam," he'd say, his grin sharp enough to cut. Or he'd sling an arm around my shoulders after practice, his touch lingering just a second too long, leaving me dizzy and hating myself for it. I was 18, painfully aware of my own secreted truth I'd buried so deep it felt like a bruise I couldn't touch. I liked guys. Always had. But in a town where different was a dirty word, I kept my head down, my heart locked tight. Jake's flirting was just a game, I told myself. He did it with everyone: cheerleaders, teachers, even the lunch lady who gave him extra fries. So why did his eyes always seem to find mine in the chaos of a game? Like he was searching for something I didn't dare show. That night, everything changed. It was the last practice before the state championship, and the air buzzed with nerves. The locker room had emptied out, leaving just me and Jake, the fluorescent lights flickering above us. I was tying my shoes, trying to ignore the way my hands shook, when he leaned against my locker, too close, his breath warm against my cheek. "You're quiet tonight, Sammy," he said, his voice softer than usual, almost serious. I froze, my pulse a wild thing in my throat. Then his hand brushed mine, deliberate, electric, and nothing like the playful nudges we'd shared before. It was a line crossed, a spark that could burn everything down. I pulled back, my face burning. "What the hell, Jake?" I muttered, my voice barely steady. He didn't move, just watched me with those blue eyes, sharp and unreadable. "You tell me," he said, and the weight of those words felt like a challenge I wasn't ready to face. The next few days were a blur of practice and avoidance. I dodged Jake's glances, his easy smiles, but I couldn't shake the memory of his touch. It wasn't just the physicality of it was the way it cracked open something inside me, something I'd spent years trying to hide. Our team was tight, a family forged in sweat and shared dreams, but I'd always felt like an outsider, carrying a secret that could unravel it all. Being gay in our town wasn't just hard, it was dangerous. I'd heard the slurs tossed around in the halls, seen the way kids like me got pushed to the edges. Jake, with his effortless charm, could never understand that kind of fear. Or so I thought. The night before the championship, we had a team dinner at Coach's house. Jake sat across from me, his knee brushing mine under the table. I flinched, but he didn't pull away. His eyes held mine, steady and searching, like he was trying to say something without words. My chest tightened, torn between wanting to run and wanting to lean closer. After dinner, he caught me by the garage, his hand grabbing my wrist. "We need to talk, Sam," he said, his voice low, urgent. I wanted to yank free, to tell him to stop messing with me, but the look on his face, raw, unguarded, kept me rooted. We ended up in his truck, parked under a streetlight that cast long shadows across his face. I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted, his hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him steady. But that night in the locker room, I meant it. My breath caught, the world tilting under me. "Jake," The guy who dated cheerleaders and partied with the team was saying things I'd only dreamed of hearing. But I couldn't trust it, not yet. "You're straight," I said, the word sharp, defensive. He laughed, a broken sound, and shook his head. "Maybe I'm not as straight as I thought." Those words hung between us, heavy and dangerous. I wanted to believe him, to let myself fall into the possibility. But fear clawed at me. What if this was a mistake? What if he was just confused, and I was the one who'd pay the price? Our town wasn't kind to stories like ours, and I'd spent too long protecting myself to let my guard down now. But as Jake's hand found mine in the dark, his fingers lacing through mine with a quiet certainty, I felt the first stirrings of something reckless, something that might just be worth the risk. The championship game was a blur of mud and adrenaline, our team fighting tooth and nail under the stadium lights. I could still feel Jake's hand in mine from the night before, the memory burning through every sprint, every pass. When the final whistle blew, we'd won 3-2, a victory that sent our small town into a frenzy. But as the team celebrated, piling into a sweaty, cheering heap, Jake's arm around my shoulders felt different, heavier, like a promise neither of us could name. After the game, the team spilled into a local diner, high on victory and cheap milkshakes. Jake slid into the booth next to me, his thigh pressed against mine, casual but deliberate. I tried to focus on the chatter coach's bad jokes, our goalie's loud reenactment of his save, but Jake's presence was a current pulling me under. "You were unstoppable out there," he murmured, his lips close to my ear, hidden by the noise of the diner. My face heated, and I mumbled something about teamwork, but his grin told me he wasn't buying it. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling of my bedroom, the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck up as a kid mocking me with their faded light. Jake's words, "Maybe I'm not as straight as I thought," played on a loop, each syllable a knife twisting in my chest. I wanted to believe him, but doubt was a louder voice. What if this was just a phase for him, a fleeting curiosity? I'd seen what happened to guys who came out in our town: whispers, fists, families turning their backs. My own dad, a mechanic with hands like iron, had made it clear what he thought of that kind, without ever knowing it was me he was talking about. The next week, school was a haze of congratulations and post-game hype. Jake was everywhere, leaning against my locker, tossing me a water bottle during gym, his eyes always finding mine. It was thrilling and terrifying, like standing on the edge of a cliff. I started noticing things I hadn't before, the way his smile softened when he looked at me, the way his teasing felt personal, like a code only we understood. But I also saw the way others watched us: teammates, classmates, even teachers. In a town like ours, eyes were always waiting for a reason to judge. One afternoon, we were in the weight room, just the two of us, the clank of metal echoing in the empty space. Jake was spotting me on the bench press, his hands hovering over the bar, his face inches from mine. "You're stronger than you look, Sam," he said, his voice low, teasing. I laughed, trying to play it cool, but my heart was racing. When I sat up, our knees brushed, and he didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned closer, his breath warm against my neck. "What are we doing, Jake?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer, just looked at me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. That night, he texted me to meet him at the old quarry, a place kids went to sneak beers or make out under the stars. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen, but something in me, hope, stupidity, or both, pushed me to go. When I got there, Jake was sitting on the hood of his truck, the moonlight carving shadows across his face. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said. No preamble, no games. My stomach flipped, but fear kept me grounded. "You don't get it, Jake," I said, my voice shaking. This isn't just a game for me. If people find out, I'm the one who's screwed. He slid off the hood, closing the distance between us. I'm not playing, Sam, he said, his voice raw. I'm scared too, but I'm here. His hand cupped my face, and before I could think, he kissed me a soft, desperate press of lips that stole my breath. It was everything I'd wanted and everything I feared. A moment that felt like freedom and a trap all at once. When we pulled apart, the world felt different. Sharper. Like I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. The kiss at the quarry hung over me like a storm cloud. Beautiful and threatening. I couldn't look at Jake without feeling the heat of his lips. The way his hands had trembled against my skin. But in the daylight, with the world watching, I was a coward again, dodging his texts and avoiding him in the halls. School felt like a minefield. Our teammates were loud, oblivious, but I caught the occasional glance curious, suspicious. Jake didn't make it easy. He'd brush past me in the cafeteria, his hand grazing my back, or call out some flirty joke that made my heart stutter and my face burn. Relax, Sam, he'd say when I glared at him. No one's paying attention. But I was. Every look, every whisper felt like a spotlight, and I wasn't ready for the world to see me. At home, things were worse. My dad was in one of his moods, ranting about politics and woke nonsense over dinner. I kept my eyes on my plate, nodding when I had to, but his words cut deep. You're not one of those weirdos, are you, Sam? He'd asked once, half joking, half serious. I'd laughed it off, my stomach churning, but the memory lingered. If he knew about Jake, about me, I didn't know what he'd do. Disown me, maybe. Or worse. Jake wasn't giving up, though. He cornered me after practice one day, his face a mix of frustration and hurt. Why were you shutting me out? He asked, his voice low so the others wouldn't hear. I wanted to tell him the truth that I was terrified, that I couldn't afford to lose everything for a maybe, but the words stuck in my throat. I just need space, I mumbled, hating how weak it sounded. He stared at me, his jaw tight, then walked away without another word. That weekend, there was a party at Sarah's house, one of the cheerleaders. I almost didn't go, but my best friend, Mia, dragged me along, insisting I needed to live a little. The house was packed, music thumping, red cups everywhere. Jake was there, of course, holding court with a group of girls, his laugh loud and easy. I hated how much it hurt to see him like that, like he could just slip back into his old life while I was drowning in mine. I was halfway through a beer when he found me in the backyard, away from the noise. You're killing me, Sam, he said, his voice rough. I'm trying here, but you keep running. I wanted to snap back, to tell him he didn't get it, but the look in his eyes stopped me raw, unguarded, like he was laying himself bare. I'm not running, I said finally, my voice cracking. I'm just scared. He stepped closer, his hand brushing mine, and for a moment, it was just us, the world fading away. I'm scared too, he whispered. But I want this. I want you. Before I could respond, someone shouted his name from the house, and the spell broke. He glanced back, then at me, his eyes pleading. Don't give up on me, Sam, he said, then disappeared into the crowd. I stood there, heart pounding, torn between hope and fear. Jake was offering me something I'd never dared to dream of, but the cost felt impossible. Our town, our team, our families, none of them would make this easy. But as I watched him laugh with the others, his eyes still finding mine across the yard, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was worth the fight. The weeks after the party were a tightrope walk. Jake and I stole moments when we could quiet talks in his truck. Fleeting touches in empty hallways, but every one felt like a gamble. I was falling for him, hard and fast, and it terrified me. Love wasn't supposed to feel like a secret mission, but in our town, it did. Jake was trying. I could see it. He'd text me late at night. His messages a mix of goofy emojis and raw honesty. "I dream about you, Sam," he wrote once, and I stared at the screen until my eyes burned, too scared to reply. He was braver than me, or maybe just more reckless. He'd sit too close at team meetings, his knee brushing mine, or slip me a note in the locker room that said, "You're my favorite distraction." I kept every one, hidden in a shoebox under my bed, like evidence of a crime I couldn't confess. But secrets don't stay secret forever. One afternoon, I was leaving the library when I saw Ethan, one of our teammates, watching me from across the quad. His eyes narrowed, and my stomach dropped. Ethan was the kind of guy who thrived on gossip, the one who'd spread rumors about a freshman just for wearing the wrong shoes. If he suspected anything about me and Jake, it wouldn't stay quiet. That night, Jake drove us to the quarry again, the stars sharp above us. "I don't care who knows," he said, his voice fierce. I'm tired of hiding. I wanted to believe him, to let myself fall into his certainty, but fear was a louder voice. "You don't get it, Jake," I said, my hands shaking. "You can go back to being the golden boy. I can't. If this gets out, I lose everything, me family, my friends, my place on the team." He looked at me, his face soft but determined. "You won't lose me," he said, and kissed me again, slower this time, like he was trying to prove it. I let myself sink into it, the world narrowing to the warmth of his lips, the steady beat of his heart under my hand. But when we pulled apart, reality crashed back. "We can't keep doing this," I said, my voice barely audible. "Not like this." Jake's face fell, but he nodded. "Then we'll figure it out," he said. "Together." I wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at me. The next day at practice, Ethan's smirk confirmed my fears. He didn't say anything, but his eyes followed us, sharp and knowing. I felt exposed, like a spotlight had found me in the dark. That evening, I went to Mia for advice. She was the only one who knew about me, the only one I trusted. Sitting on her bedroom floor, surrounded by posters of indie bands, I told her everything, Jake. The kiss, the fear. She listened, her face serious, then hugged me tight. "You deserve to be happy, Sam," she said. "But you've got to decide what you're willing to risk." Her words stayed with me, a challenge I wasn't sure I could meet. By the end of the week, rumors were spreading. Whispers in the locker room, sidelong glances in the halls. Jake didn't seem to notice, or maybe he didn't care, but I felt them like knives. When Ethan finally cornered me after practice, his voice was low, taunting. "You and Jake seem real close lately," he said, his smile cruel. "Anything you want to share?" I froze, my heart in my throat, and mumbled something about teamwork before bolting. But the damage was done. The secret was slipping, and I didn't know how to hold it together. The rumors spread like wildfire, quiet but relentless. By Monday, I could feel the shift teammates who used to clap me on the back now kept their distance. Jake, oblivious or defiant, kept up his usual charm, but his flirty grins felt like gasoline on a spark. I wanted to scream at him to stop, to see how dangerous this was, but every time I tried, his eyes softened, and my words died. At home, things were unraveling too. My dad caught me texting Jake one night, his eyes narrowing at the screen. "Who's that?" he asked, his voice sharp. I lied, said it was just a teammate, but his frown lingered. I started keeping my phone hidden, my door locked, but the weight of his suspicion was suffocating. I was living two lives, one where I was Sam, the good son, the reliable midfielder, and another where I was falling for a boy who might ruin me. Jake wasn't making it easier. He'd pull me aside after practice, his hand lingering on my arm, his voice low and earnest. "I'm all in, Sam," he said one day, his eyes locked on mine. "I don't care what they think." But I did. Every whispered rumor, every knowing look chipped away at me. I started skipping team hangouts, avoiding the diner, the quarry, anywhere Jake might find me. But he always did. One night, he showed up at my house, his truck idling in the driveway. "Get in," he said, his face a mix of frustration and desperation. Against my better judgment, I did. We drove to the edge of town, where the fields stretched endless and dark. "I'm losing you," he said, his voice breaking. "Tell me what to do, Sam." "I'll do it." I wanted to tell him to back off, to let me breathe, but the truth was I didn't want him to. I was in love with him, and it was tearing me apart. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed a text from Ethan. A blurry photo of me and Jake at the quarry. Too close. Too obvious. "Careful, Sammy," it read. "People are talking." My blood ran cold. Jake saw the screen and cursed, his hands gripping the wheel. "Let them talk," he said, but his voice shook. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, and it mirrored mine. The next day, school was a nightmare. The photo had spread, not just among the team, but across social media. Whispers turned to stares, and by lunch, someone had scrawled a slur on my locker. I scrubbed it off, my hand shaking, but the word burned into me. Jake found me in the bathroom, his face pale. "I'm sorry, Sam," he said, his voice hoarse. I didn't think. I cut him off, anger flaring. "You didn't think because you don't have to. You can walk away from this." "I can't." He reached for me, but I pulled back, the space between us a chasm. "I'm not walking away," he said, his voice fierce. "I love you." The words hit like a punch, stealing my breath. I wanted to say it back, to close the gap, but fear held me back. "You don't know what you're saying," I whispered, and left him standing there, my heart breaking with every step. That night, I told Mia everything. She hugged me, her voice steady. "You can't keep running, Sam," she said. "You've got to face it, yourself, all of it." She was right, but facing it meant risking everything. And as I lay awake, the photo and Jake's words looping in my mind, I wasn't sure I had the strength. The photo changed everything. By the end of the week, it was everywhere: classmates' phones, group chats, even the local gossip pages. I stopped going to practice, claiming a sprained ankle, but the truth was I couldn't face the team. Jake kept texting, calling, but I ignored him, my fear louder than my feelings. I was drowning, and he was the anchor pulling me under. At school, the slurs multiplied in my locker, and notes slipped into my bag. I kept my head down, but the weight of it was crushing. Mia tried to shield me, glaring at anyone who stared too long, but even she couldn't stop the tide. One day, Ethan cornered me in the parking lot, his smirk venomous. "Didn't peg you for the type, Sam," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "Guess Jake's got a thing for weirdos." I shoved past him, my fists clenched, but his laughter followed me. Home was no refuge. My dad had seen the photo too. Someone had sent it to him, anonymous and cruel. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me over breakfast, his eyes cold. Finally, he spoke. "You got something to tell me, Sam." His voice was low, dangerous. I shook my head, my throat tight, and fled to my room. That night, I heard him arguing with my mom, his voice rising with words like disgrace and fix him. I locked my door, my heart pounding, and wondered how long I could keep this up. Jake wasn't giving up. He showed up at my window one night, tapping softly until I let him in. "You can't keep doing this," he said, his voice raw. "I'm here, Sam. I'm not going anywhere." I wanted to believe him, but the world was closing in. "You don't get it," I said, my voice breaking. "This isn't just about us. It's my life, Jake. My family. My future." He reached for me, but I stepped back, tears burning my eyes. "I can't do this," I said, and the words felt like a betrayal. The next day, I found a note in my locker, not a slur, but Jake's handwriting. "Meet me at the quarry tonight, please." I almost didn't go, but something in me broke, and I found myself there, under the same stars where we'd kissed. Jake was waiting, his face pale, his hands shoved in his pockets. "I told my parents," he said, his voice steady but quiet. "About us." My heart stopped. "What?" I whispered. He nodded, his eyes meeting mine. "They didn't take it well, but I don't care. I love you, Sam, and I'm done hiding." I stared at him, torn between awe and terror. He'd done what I couldn't: face the truth, risked everything. But before I could speak, headlights flashed, and Ethan's car pulled up, his voice cutting through the night. "Well, look at the lovebirds," he sneered, stepping out with 2 other teammates. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just gossip anymore. This was danger. Jake stepped in front of me, his shoulders squared. "Back off, Ethan," he said, his voice low. Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're both done," he said, and I knew he meant it. As they drove off, their taunts echoing, Jake turned to me, his face fierce. "We're stronger than them," he said. "Together." For the first time, I wanted to believe him, but fear still held me back. I didn't know if I was ready to fight, but I knew I couldn't run forever. Ethan's threat wasn't empty. By morning, the school was a war zone. Graffiti on my locker, my gym bag slashed, whispers following me like shadows. Jake was getting it to his car keyed, his name dragged through group chats. But he didn't flinch. At lunch, he sat next to me, his shoulder brushing mine, a silent defiance. I wanted to be as brave as him, but fear was a vice around my chest. I told Mia everything that night, my voice shaking as I recounted Ethan's ambush. She was furious, her eyes blazing. "You don't deserve this, Sam," she said. "Neither of you. Fight back." But fighting back meant coming out, fully, no more hiding. I wasn't sure I could do it. Not when my dad's silence at home felt like a ticking bomb. Not when every slur felt like a cut I couldn't heal. Jake had other ideas. He started being bolder, holding my hand in the school parking lot, kissing my cheek before practice. It was reckless, terrifying, but it lit something in me. He was all in, and I was still half out, torn between love and survival. One evening, he dragged me to a team meeting, his hand firm in mine. "We're telling them," he said, his voice steady. I wanted to protest, but his eyes held me, and I nodded. The team was gathered in the locker room, coach at the front. Jake didn't hesitate. "Sam and I are together," he said, his voice clear, unapologetic. The room went silent, eyes wide, some angry, some confused. Ethan snorted, but Coach shut him down with a look. "Anyone got a problem with that?" Coach said. "Takes it up with me." I couldn't believe it. Coach, the gruff ex-Marine, was on our side. But not everyone was. Ethan and a few others walked out, their silence louder than words. That night, I went home, my heart pounding. My dad was waiting, his face like stone. "Is it true?" he asked, holding up his phone, the photo of me and Jake glaring back. I froze, my throat tight, but Jake's courage echoed in me. "Yes," I said, my voice barely audible. "I'm gay. And I love him." The words hung there, heavy, final. My dad's face twisted anger, disappointment. I couldn't tell. "Get out," he said, his voice cold. My mom cried, but she didn't stop him. I grabbed a bag and left, my world collapsing. Jake was waiting at the quarry, his truck a beacon in the dark. I told him everything, tears streaming down my face. He pulled me close, his arm steady, warm. "You're not alone," he whispered. "We'll figure this out." For the first time, I believed him. Not because it was easy, but because he was there, and that was enough. I stayed with Mia's family that week, sleeping on her couch, my life packed into a duffel bag. The town felt smaller, crueler, but Jake was my anchor. We faced the stairs together, his hand in mine, a quiet rebellion against the hate. Some teammates came around, slapping our backs at practice, but others, like Ethan, kept their distance, their silence a weapon. School was brutal, but we had allies: Mia, Coach, even a few teachers who quietly checked in. Jake's parents were struggling, but they didn't kick him out, and that gave me hope. We spent nights at the quarry, talking about the future college, a city where we could be us. No hiding. It wasn't easy, but it was possible, and that was enough. One day, my mom showed up at Mia's, her eyes red. "I'm sorry," she said, hugging me tight. "Your dad, he needs time, but I'm here." It wasn't everything, but it was a start. I realized then that love wasn't just Jake, it was Mia, my mom, the teammates who stood by us. It was the strength to be myself, even when it hurt. The season ended, and we graduated, walking across the stage hand in hand, a final act of defiance. Some cheered, some didn't, but it didn't matter. We'd survived. Jake and I moved to Columbus for college, a new city, a new start. It wasn't perfect, there were still whispers, still fights, but we faced them together. Looking back, I see it clearly. Jake's touch that night in the locker room wasn't just a line crossed. It was a door opened. It led to pain, yes, but also to love, to truth, to a life I never thought I could have. And as we stood together, watching the sunset over our new city, I knew we'd keep crossing lines, together, for as long as we had.